Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast.
That's how it sounds synchronized, everyone.
This is the podcast where 4 psychotherapists, 4 of us Canadians, 0 of us Americans, serve you cutting-edge mental health knowledge. I am Dr. Ryan Howes in Port Moody, Canada.
What? Yes, he is. And I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, also, a registered clinical counselor. You didn't say a psychologist.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Also in Port Moody right now.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, a psychotherapist, sitting with these guys in Port Moody.
I'm Chris Boyd from Pasadena, California. No, in Port Moody too. We're all in the same room.
We are.
Big deal.
It is a very big deal. We're in the same room. I'm made myself honorary Canadian just because
Yes.
I'm here for now, but I'm not really.
During Canada Day weekend.
It was amazing that just so happened that planned this trip up here to visit my friends and colleagues and landed here on Canada Day.
Indeed.
What an amazing celebration you guys have up here.
Thanks, Ryan.
Everyone's truly happy to be Canadian, it seems like.
Yeah, I think so.
For the most part, yeah. It's a great country in lots of ways.
Yes.
Far from perfect, that's for sure.
I
think
was
a lot of Canadians are building awareness of our whole process of reconciliation with our indigenous population. And also, I'm sure it's the same down there, of course, just the polarity when it comes to the pandemic as well. So we've actually felt quite divided up here as a nation, but a lot of great awareness and conversation, discussion coming from that.
Yeah, you guys were mentioning that at because we went to a big kind of community celebration for this, and a lot of people wear red, like in honor of being Canadian. Like I think in the States we might wear red, white, and blue, that sort of thing. But there's also is it orange that some people are wearing in like solidarity with the Indigenous people?
Joanna, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, it's I think there's an Indigenous Peoples Day as well as a week kind of honoring and spreading awareness about just Indigenous folks and their rights, but orange is the color to kind of promote awareness, and that's become extra prominent the past couple of years with some of the findings of mass graves and such in Canada, and so there's some orange this Canada Day, and so yeah.
Okay, is that I don't need to go too deep into this, but is it a divisive point? I mean, there's some people who are like, no, we shouldn't support the Indigenous people.
I don't know if I can speak to that. I think there just seems to be folks who are happy to continue celebrating, and that's not out of malice. And then I think there's folks who want to cancel Canada Day, and then I think there's folks who want to just try to do a bit of everything and try to figure out what they feel and think. So yeah, I can't speak to what the vibe is out there too much, but I don't know if you guys have a comment.
No, that was just an interesting way to ask that question.
Yeah.
I think my automatic reaction was like, well, no, I don't think I know personally or have heard of anyone not wanting to support the First Nations community and everything going through. But at the same time, there's some people who maybe don't understand or want to cancel Canada Day, continue with Canada Day celebrations, but sometimes that's read as not supporting, but their intention isn't to be unsupportive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was an interesting way to word it.
I throw that out there because I guess in a sort of similar comparison in the States would be like Black Lives Matter, and then people who are kind of in opposition to that being all lives matter, and so they would say, well, we shouldn't just so there's a lot of heated politics on both sides,
right?
But it's nice to hear that you don't have like an opposition to supporting and recognizing the experience of Indigenous people.
Yeah, I have a sense of opposition to that. I think everyone is quite impacted by, Joanna mentioned, finding these mass graves at these residential schools. So again, we don't have to get into the history of it, but it's pretty brutal, a lot of abuse and trauma. But I think people would be opposed to the idea of canceling Canada Day and not celebrating Canada Day. So I think that would be more of the topic of discussion, right? How to proceed
Got it.
with this knowledge and how to move forward.
I will say everyone was having a great time and it seemed like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There was some singing of the national anthem. There was some people just yelling of proud to be Canadian. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was some good times. So yeah, for those listeners and watchers, we were down at a local park, and they had festivities. So there was live music and like food trucks and beer gardens and dueling pianos and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's safe to say it was the most people that any of us have been around since pre-pandemic. So there was lots of people in close quarters, and it threw me off a bit. I don't know about you guys, but still a good time.
Yeah. Like I've been to concerts since, but this is just different because it's loud. Like you're not all just sitting watching something.
Yeah.
It's
People
not
are walking
orderly.
around.
Yeah. Everyone, all varying degrees of silliness
Yeah.
and
Inebriation.
inebriation.
Yeah. Probably a few thousand people
Yeah.
shoved into a park.
Yeah.
So the dueling pianos were taking requests, and it was great stuff. Elton John and a few other
Canadian acts.
acts and the Eagles, stuff like
Bruce
that.
Springsteen.
And you could I guess email them if you had a request.
Yeah.
It seemed like, and at one point, one of the piano players said, "Oh, we've got an email from an American, not me, an email from an American saying, oh, happy to be here for Canada Day. Will you play something American like American Pie?" And I was like, "Oh, that is so American." So hey everyone, thanks for having me to your Canada Day celebration. Let's bring some America into it.
Yeah.
And they sang it.
It's a
Actually.
big hit. Everyone's saying it. Yeah.
Everyone sang it. It's a good song, but
We're very
wow.
Canadian about it.
Yeah.
Let's support your decision to sing this song.
Yeah.
Everyone together.
Let's all go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very influenced by our neighbors to the south.
Yeah. Well, and Bye Bye Mr. American Pie is a great song.
It is a great song. It is a great song.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I was gonna say for our listeners, I'm sure if you've been following us for a long time, this indeed is our first time recording a podcast together in person, but it's not our first time hanging out in person. So I don't know if you're just coming onto this. It sounds like we've never sat together, maybe, but
right.
yeah, but this is our first time seeing Ryan in 3 years.
In about 3 years. Yeah.
Like
Right.
January 2019. So almost 3.5 years, actually. That's a long time.
That is a long time.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. I'm happy to be among you guys once again.
Yeah.
Fun. And not on a screen.
Not
Except for our
honestly.
viewers, we are all on the screen.
Yes. Hi.
That's good.
We also had a bit of a break from our podcast for about 3 or 4 weeks.
A good month, yeah.
Yeah.
For a month. Lots of traveling happening.
Mhm.
Other things popping up. So it's nice to be back, connecting.
Great to be back. Well, today we have the opportunity to finally get to do our book club, which has been in the works for a couple months now.
It's true. Shall we pause?
Let's pause, and at least in the audio version, you will hear Joanna's theme song for the book club. Go. Hey!
Well done, Joe.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, so good. Yes. It just never gets old.
It doesn't. It's great.
Never gets old. So the book that we've been talking about for months
Yes.
talking about it is the book Caste.
Yep. The Origins of Our Discontents.
Origins of Our Discontent, an Oprah book club selection. So let's just open it up.
Woo! So for listeners who haven't read it or acquired it or seen this book, it's quite a long book,
It is.
just for starters. And yeah, so essentially, I don't know, I guess the summary is that the writer is making a case for the US to actually have a caste system, and compares it to other caste systems.
She's not advocating a caste system. She's saying that we already, declared
She's
we do
declaring
have.
it, that there is one, and
Mhm.
comparing it to other system castes in the world and in history. Yeah, heavy book. It's a heavy, like literally a big heavy book, but a heavy read emotionally and psychologically as well.
Absolutely. She talks about how she's comparing the system, the issues going on in the United States with India and their kind of established caste system there, and how it's different levels of people who seem to have more power the higher you go up the caste system, and how you're kind of born into that caste and there's really nothing you can do about it, regardless of what you achieve or accomplish in life. You're still kind of part of that caste.
Yeah.
And she's pointing out, I think she breaks it down in the United States, at least, as a caste where the white people are at the top. There's like a middle caste of Asian Americans, or upper middle caste, a lower middle caste of Hispanic Americans, Latin Americans, and then the blacks being at the bottom, and African Americans. And that's just she said that's just been established, and that's just kind of the system that's been running for hundreds of years now. And even though we might think we've made a lot of progress, that actually we haven't made much progress on the caste system.
Yeah. Yeah, I must say there's definitely a lot of the book that was absolutely brutal to listen to it or to read, especially the lynching chapters. It was awful, uncomfortable, right? But important, I think, to read that or to listen to that. It's kind of part of history, American history, that's not maybe touched on as much as other things. So to hear those personal stories were quite impactful.
Yeah, I think it like we knew that this stuff went on. Like you learn little bits about it. We didn't learn a lot about American history too much in school, but we had our own about, these, I can't think of the schools, residential schools and things for our Indigenous population and how they were treated. And, we have our own kind of darkened history there, and some things continue today, but it's just the degree and the details to which you do learn about these things was heartbreaking and a bit anxiety provoking. For me, I talked to these guys a little bit about it already, but I was quite anxious after a couple, very distressed after a few chapters, because just thinking of how people are capable of these things and how normalized it was to treat people so horrifically was very disturbing. And I think it made me think of like things for today in our cultures and things. So it was a hard read, very enlightening. This was, for we're all white here, and I want to acknowledge that this is not our history, but gosh, we were a part of this colonization and stuff, but just it was hard to learn about this stuff. And hard read. So very big warning there for people if you're gonna read or listen to this. It's a hard one. It's tough.
Yeah, quick graphic. It's kind of, I had the opportunity to visit Auschwitz in Germany, and the author actually talked about Nazi Germany quite a bit in the book, making some comparisons there, obviously with the Nazis dehumanizing the Jewish people, and how they learned a lot about what was going on in the United States as to set up some models to kind of do something similar with the Jewish people. Going to Auschwitz was extremely uncomfortable as well, and graphic, and just same kind of feelings, like how are we capable of doing something like this. So it's kind of similar feelings there, but I think it's important to experience that though. But yeah, the warning though, it's you might want to do so in small doses, or you just kind of have to know what you're in for, I guess, eh?
That was one of the more powerful pieces of this, when she lays it out. It really is kind of laying out a case for the idea of a caste system. And as she's talking about how Nazi Germany kind of rose and what their models were, they were studying the way that the Americans were subjugating the the minorities here and saying, we just need to follow what they're doing. And that is mind blowing for me.
Mhm.
Holy cow. We were the model for Nazi
Yeah.
Germany.
Because in
Whoa.
our minds, that's a huge thing in history.
Oh,
in
it's like,
Nazi
oh, that's-
Germany.
Yeah.
But it's like actually like
We're learning from
it
us.
was, yeah, it
Yeah.
was that was big.
Mm.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, she was definitely laying out a case for a caste system. And it seems like it was a very compelling case. And I think she made a very strong case, and that could be a factor. She often mentioned that certain things are socially constructed. So even like class, I think she uses is a socially constructed term. I see caste as potentially in that same ballpark, but I think it helps build awareness. And I think if you understand that this is a factor, then maybe that can help us make some changes moving forward, right?
Yeah. I'd say if I had a critique of the book,
Yeah.
it would be the fact that she actually sold me on the caste system idea after the first chapter or two.
Yeah.
But she kept on revisiting it throughout the book.
Yeah.
Right? Which is fine. But I'm like, oh yeah, you got me. I'm already sold.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
was really trying to get that across, that it is a caste system. When
Yeah.
again, I think it's a pretty compelling
Mhm.
case. I think if I had another critique of it is she got right into the politics of modern day, using some modern day examples in the first chapter, which is fine, drawing some connections there. But my concern is it probably alienated a lot of folks, maybe south of the border, who
Mm.
are more on the Republican side or conservative side, because the fact that she was bringing up Trump and some of his politics, I have a feeling some people will say, well, I'm not, this is a more political book, I'm not going to read on,
Mm.
and which is too bad, because I think it's an important book to listen to or read. And but by going the political angles that early, I think half the population may say, you know what, it's not for me.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go there. So another small critique just based on how she approached that.
It is a book club. We've got to have our little critiques here or there, right?
I'm not
Mhm.
saying that she's wrong.
Oh,
I'm just
no.
saying that some people, like if they sense that it's as a political angle to it, then they're going to write it off, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I'll say though that it's very nice that she's not a psychologist or a sociologist. She's a reporter. She's a reporter for the New York Times, or has been a reporter for the New York Times. And she had a lot of her own personal stories that she brought into this
Yes.
of being on assignment to speak to someone of some importance or something, and then just overlooking her because she was an African American woman and didn't think that she would be able to, wouldn't be of the stature to work for the New York Times. And there are many stories that she had about that, and
Mhm.
just her own personal experience with being, really feeling like the lowest level of a caste system.
Mhm.
So it's a very personal story too.
Yeah, I thought to add to that, I thought she did a great job at then connecting the dots, like to say our current day racism isn't necessarily this super, like, not to say racism is superficial, but that's the word I'm going to use. It's this much deeper, more complex byproduct of a caste system. And so when we're trying to take a look at that to see something in context, like there's so much more beneath it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was a big takeaway for me. I do feel that after reading this book, I look at dynamics differently, whether that, racism and culture and what's happened and for people and what's coming into the room, or persons who are maybe of white descent and how they're treating other people or their perspectives, their language. I don't know, I seem to be on more alert, like it really broadened or added another level for my perspective on behavior.
Sure.
Yeah.
We talked about implicit bias before in this
Exactly.
podcast, right? A lot of people are not aware of it, but
Well, that's what's implicit,
Mhm.
unconscious bias, right?
What is that? Tell me about implicit unconscious bias.
well, explicit would be you're aware of it, right?
Yeah.
So it can be more stronger views you have on certain things. Implicit would be more subtle, like walking down a street, maybe you hold your bag closer to you when someone of color walks past you. you know, I'm not even aware of that, but it's kind of automatic, it's ingrained.
Or you just feel more tense,
Or
like
it's-
your body tenses, or
Yeah, where explicit bias would be you saying, well, I'm not going to consider this person for, I'm going to consider the white person for the job, not versus someone else, because
Mhm.
you know, maybe because of some views you have in
Mhm.
regard to people of color. I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah.
So the goal is to, of course, make those implicit biases explicit, right? So we
Yes.
build awareness of them. So, because we all have automatic thoughts that we can't necessarily control.
Yes.
So having the automatic thought doesn't make you a bad person. It's what you choose to do with that thought, I think, is what you got to work on, right? The second thought you choose to have, or trying to catch yourself before you react a certain way that contradicts your values or your goals. So we all have them. So are
Yeah.
you aware of them is the big question.
The
And how to
studies,
bring them into more awareness, and what can you do about that, right?
the studies of implicit bias, there have been many, but I think some of the earlier ones where they would show pictures to people on the computer screen and have them hit a button, whether it's like good or bad, and have to be like really quick about that. Is this a good thing or bad thing, or is this safe or unsafe? But different questions that they'd have, and it would show, you know, inanimate objects, you know, a book, a microphone, whatever it might be, and then a white person, and then a black person, you know, something like, and they're trying to get people to answer really quickly and trying to see what is this kind of automatic response you might have. And based on some of that people would have a more negative response towards people of color, and oftentimes including people of color, which shows, again, go to this caste idea of like, this is so deeply ingrained that you know, it's been kind of built up in the culture from very early on.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think with this book too, I was looking for, again, a strong case in terms of it's a caste system. That's she keeps on going back to that.
Mhm.
And so there is a narrative there. But I kept on asking myself, okay, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? Or
Yeah.
what's going to happen next? And I think she gave us some ideas at the very, very end. Actually, might have been is it the epilogue or after the last chapter? She talked a bit about some ideas. And she used a very powerful example too, when she was connecting with that plumber. Remember that?
Yeah.
And she noticed right away that, you know, just based on how he was dressed and maybe a certain hat he was wearing, that they had very different views on things. And anyways, I think she could sense herself kind of closing off a bit and getting kind of defensive, and she felt he was starting to treat her in a pretty biased way. But then they had a personal connection, talked about a lost family member, and they connected on that level, but more of an emotional level there, being there for loved ones or grieving the loss of loved ones. And it actually led to a great ending, I think. You know, I think he was a little more compassionate and
That's right.
was able to assist her, help her with the issue at hand. So yeah, I thought that story kind of stood out to me in the book.
Sure. More about finding our commonalities, our similarities, common experiences, especially experiences with pain and loss and grief.
Yeah.
I think that really helps people to see, you know, we're not all that different.
Mhm.
And especially when it comes to, you know, skin color, that's just, emotions are universal. People know what loss and trauma is.
Mhm. I think there needs to be, so this actually comes from, we had a First Nations speaker at our work retreat, and she teaches a course in cultural safety and humility.
Mm.
And I had never thought about the humility piece before, but it's such an important piece, right? So I think part of moving forward here is that there's a lot of people out there in the world that need to work on their humility, including myself, I'm certain of it. But just to say, hey, you know what, I need to see that, be more open and more curious, and to understand this from a different perspective, and to work on that piece. Because I think that there's still, like in the very beginning of this book, she talked about kind of the kickback that people have of, well, it wasn't me that did that. So why do I have to take care of it? And she compared it to buying a house and saying, well, you've inherited this house, or you've bought this house.
Mhm.
And now and it's 100 years old or 200 years old, and the wiring needs to be fixed, and the plumbing needs to be fixed, and the insulation needs to be redone, whatever it might be, all these things need to be, you have to take care of the house though. You didn't build the house, you didn't have it commissioned, you didn't, pick the contractors, but now you have to, it's your responsibility now to take care of the house. And our society is our house, right?
Interesting.
It really stuck with me because it was like, it's true, we did inherit this house. What can we do to make it better?
True.
So,
I like that.
so I do think moving forward, there's gonna have to be a change in perspective. I think a lot of people are already making that change or have made that change. There's a mindset happening, like a shift there, a zeitgeist. Throw that word out there again. But I think there's a large population that hasn't made that shift yet.
The awareness.
Yeah, like I don't think we've hit like critical mass on that perspective shift.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But it's like you hear it more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's been some subtle shifts there. But yeah, probably still a lot of work to be done, of course, right? Yeah. Back to Auschwitz, my friend was there recently, and there's a plaque outside that says, I'm sure you've heard it, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Mhm.
And that kind of, again, made me think of this book as well. But one thing I was pondering the other day was like, I don't think the Nazis knew they're being Nazis, if that makes sense. They felt very justified in their actions. They felt they're in the right. And that kind of, I have to think of today's society as well. That I know the term Nazis been thrown out.
Humility,
Yeah,
though,
like
right?
humility.
To say maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, but the Nazi, that term gets thrown out all the time. You're being Nazis. You're being Nazis. But they're on either side of the spectrum.
Sure. Yeah, it's true.
But again, that awareness and humility is so important.
Yeah. Especially if you're getting called out, just to take a step back and say, am I? Is that? I need to take a look at this. Where's this person coming from? And yeah, reflect on it. Opposed to that automatic reaction of defensiveness or aggression or
When you said that, Chris, sorry, I just thought like Nazis may not know they're being Nazis, and I'm sure there's little cases here or there, but it's also hard because there's outliers who did have issue with what's going on.
Yeah.
They might speak up, but they're may then be treated badly or ostracized themselves, right? So it's almost like I don't know, it's just, yeah, it's up to us if there's things going on to try to make changes, or if there's, even if we're in the minority, or to, I don't know, bring awareness to other people or to help teach each other. But you just have to be prepared. It's not going to be easy, but
No, because again, back to what this book is about, the whole idea of caste, these underlying forces that are so ingrained in our society. So once because it's the norm, it becomes so common in people's minds, right? So, but you're right, yeah.
I guess I just wondered if there were people saying this is actually really bad, and if there was just still
Absolutely,
that,
or
you don't really, you're the one in the wrong for thinking this is bad. I don't know. Anyways, I think that's a separate issue, but I just you try to fathom how all this has come to be, and it's actually, you start to maybe understand that maybe these recipes aren't so crazy to get people to doing these things. All the factors involved.
For sure.
She did a great job. The author did a great job of walking this idea all the way through to the current time, I believe, into current, legal situations that the police brutality situations, things like that in the States.
Yeah.
And just the very different ways that some people are treated versus others, what a white person could get away with versus what African Americans have to go through. And, I would hope that there's more awareness and more, this will help increase some more of the awareness that people have, but I do think that we've got a long ways to go still.
Well, Joanna was talking about that. We all went for a hike yesterday, and that part of the book had mentioned, like, what was it about the timeline?
Oh,
The enslavement.
yeah, I think for the time for when all the enslavement stuff stopped and the rights were there and the freedom, like it's gonna take, I think, up to like the early 2100s until there's the equal amount of time that enslavement was over to how long it lasted for. So as of right now, since it's been done, it's only a little bit of the time to which, because that lasted, I actually don't know. I think they probably stated in the book how long of a period that was, but it's now going to take us to the early 2100s until that's equal times. So it's like, it's such a big part of history, and it lasted so long, and where they haven't been, the freedom there hasn't
And
been
then
that
I
long.
think freedom's debatable, like for us to even use that, right?
Exactly. I know. I don't know what other
Where
word to
you're like,
use there.
sure, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know another word either, or like
When
saying
things shifted.
enslavement ended, but yeah, legislature maybe changed, but
Yeah,
behavior didn't.
Ah,
maybe freedom, but not equality.
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
The
But-
biases again,
Yeah.
prejudice is still there.
But like, yeah, just these, anyways, yeah.
No, that's interesting.
So there's a long way to go.
Totally.
Yeah, and then we were also talking about, Ryan, you mentioned this right before we started, but got us Canadians thinking about our First Nations, and kind of more about that. So it's, I took my first Indigenous course probably in college, and so that would have been 2002, maybe,
A course about the history of the Indigenous people?
about
or-
residential schools, culture conflict theory,
Okay.
like Indigenous studies, First Nation studies.
Oh,
So I did a couple courses in 2002, but there wasn't anything in my high school really. There might be like little paragraphs in history, but not like units.
Yeah.
And now we have like curriculum that is integrated into all levels of your
Ah.
education about history, First Nations history, and things that have gone on there. So, which is great. So we've come a long way since 2002. However, there's probably still a bunch we do not know, and whether or not Canadians actually have a caste system as well.
wow. So here's a question for you. Do you learn more about the Indigenous people, or do you learn more French? When you're growing up, when you're in elementary school, right?
Yeah.
Oh, learn more
Like
French.
French history or like
Just
French language?
French language. I mean, we've talked before about it. You guys,
French is mandatory. You
It's
have to take
mandatory.
French
yep.
Up to. so
until
on.
grade 9,
Yeah.
8, 9.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, 'cause
Yeah.
in the States, there's hardly anything being taught about the history of slavery. And now that they're starting to push the idea of critical race theory, that's being opposed by a lot of people. So,
Oh,
so this stuff, you guys are already far ahead of us when it comes to learning
Yeah.
about the oppressed people. There's a lot of resistance in the States to even learning
And-
about that.
we feel like we're already so behind.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got a long ways to go.
And just quickly, even that elder who spoke with us, who's part of the Canadian Mental Health Association and the Cultural Safety and Humility, they're actually teaching professionals, is it doctors or?
There's a cluster of colleges. So
Yeah.
when you're a certain profession, I'm going to speak to the audience now. When you're a certain profession or a cluster of professions, you have to register with a college, like physicians and doctors, psychologists, like a bunch of them, physiotherapists, all these different things. And some people have associations, some people have colleges. So the persons that have colleges, they're making it mandatory. You can't register unless you take this cultural safety and humility course. It
Interesting.
has to be part of your
Yeah.
training.
Huh.
So those things are happening, which is great. But it's, yeah.
I like that. I like that humility, which is like a value, like it's a character trait. We're going to teach you this, how to be humble,
Yeah,
it's great.
yeah. Super important.
Yeah.
So
That's tough. But I think there is a parallel there. So for us in Canada, it's our Indigenous population, in the United States, African American or Black population. But there's a lot of challenges there. There's a lot of suffering happening. And since it's so systemic and since it's been going on for so long, it's going to take a little while to correct that, right? To shift that.
It is.
So up here, of course, we have over representation when it comes to incarcerations and mental health issues and
Mhm.
addiction. And I think often there's a parallel down there with the Americans. And so, yeah, I think up here, again, building awareness back to, it's a huge first step, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think all of us building awareness and talking about it and putting this out there. So let's I know we rate books sometimes, right?
Well, this one's gonna be a hard one to rate.
This is a hard one to rate. There's a lot going on here.
Okay, I have a number. Should I?
Put your coffee mug down and put a number in.
Yeah,
Put a flash
you
of
have to
numbers
on
at the
your
same time.
hands.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Oh,
so if
yeah.
you have a 0.5 or something, you're kind of screwed here. All right,
You're
ready?
gonna have to bend your finger.
On 3. 1, 2, 3.
8.
Oh, I did 7.
8, 8, 7.
Nice.
8, 8, 8, 7.
How do you do
Okay.
your 8?
Like that?
You held it up that way and Chris did that. Interesting. Okay, sorry.
Is that a
Yeah.
Canadian way to do 8?
No, I just think it's
Series?
Hi.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I said 8 because I really think it's a rich, important work. It's an important educational tool. I also, like I said before, I think it does kind of drill home the caste point a lot, which I already agree with after the first chapter. And it is heavy. It's heavy stuff. It's heavy emotionally. I agree that it's not going to be accessible for everybody because there's so much there and because it's really emotionally a heavy topic. So that's all, but I'm glad I read it.
Right? What about you guys?
Yeah, I said 8. I almost said 7. I was got confused with my fingers, but I said 8. Yeah, I think it's a very impactful book. It was an emotional book at times.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like trying to hit home the whole cast point. It wasn't exactly like a multivaried approach to the topic. I think she had she delved into one aspect of it. But yeah, I think it's an important book
It
for
is.
people to experience.
Yeah, I said 8. I actually don't. I think it's just a heavy read, but as far as in terms of the importance of that topic and that as uncomfortable as it is, gosh, it's a big part of history for a lot of people. And so it's almost like if this is the most uncomfortable, just us reading it, we never actually had to
Oh,
look
yeah.
through this. It's like, it probably could be a 10 just for importance of reading, to just be
Mhm.
educated. Honestly, I think we can't in
That's a
that
good
term.
point.
It's like, yeah, it's
That's-
uncomfortable. It's hard, but this is so important to read.
Yeah.
So I could easily just change it to 10 because I don't, aside from it's a heavy one and I don't really have any critiques on it.
Yeah.
I just think it was, I couldn't actually get fully through it, full disclosure. It was causing me quite a bit of distress, but let's break it into little chunks. But again, I can't, that's not a criticism of the book. It's just maybe more for me to, so that's my issue.
Yeah.
It's not the book's issue. So,
Yeah. I think mine is echoed with like similar things to you guys. I just give it 7 instead of 8, but it same, like if we said how important is this book to read for people, I would be like, like 9 or 10. Like this is important information. You're going to grow as a person. It's going to be hard to read. Accessibility of it was a little bit tougher. Like it's not going to be for like a novice reader. You are going to have to be a bit of a stronger reader to get through the book as well, right? So, but very, very important read. So,
Yes.
so for me, I think it was just accessibility.
There we go. Yeah, 10 for content and 8 for delivery.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's our next book?
Oh, we didn't talk about
We didn't
that.
talk about this.
Does anyone have an idea, or should we discuss off camera and come back later?
We will discuss, and on our next podcast,
We will come to
we
an
will
answer.
have an answer.
Yes, because maybe I'm staying in Canada for a while. Who knows?
Have you guys heard of the airports? You might be like staying for a while.
Airports are having a hard time, so we'll see. But boy, fun to see you guys in person.
So
Great
good
to
to
be
see you.
here. Nice to have the gang together again. And I guess that's it for now. So like and subscribe and all of those good things.
Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, Podbean.
Wow, that's
And
really
is
good.
that it?
I think that's it. Yeah. Apple, Google, all those.
Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and Podbean.
Okay, nice.
And that's it for tonight. So we will bid you a farewell. Good night,
Toodles.
everybody.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
See you.
everyone.
I'll walk to the computer and turn it off.